Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about how to use the production possibility frontier model to explain the concept of gain from trading. So first of all, we would like to actually think about the questions. Why countries actually want to make trades with each other? So there are several reasons to believe that trade actually makes the countries better off. For instance, there might be some country that they cannot produce certain things on their own, maybe because they don't have the right weather, they don't have the right peoples, they don't have the skills, they don't have the technologies, or maybe they don't have that particular types of resources. So therefore, they have to actually trade those products from other places. Or maybe the second reason here is they cannot produce that particular kinds of goods at a very low cost, so that they might actually want to produce it somewhere else and buy it from other countries. Well, this is actually very common, especially in the United States. Right? We are buying a lot of things actually from other countries so that we can actually get those products at a lower cost possible. And number three, maybe by trading, both countries will get the benefits of the trades together. And we are going to demonstrate that in our PPF model today. And for some other times, it could be just a political reasons for the two countries to help foster the international ties. So generally speaking, we can actually use the production possibility frontier to demonstrate the incentive or maybe benefits for trading between the two parties. So this topic is not only applied to the trade between countries. You can also apply this to your personal experience every day. Why sometimes you want to buy breakfast from McDonald's but not making it on your own, and why sometimes your friends actually asking you a favor to clean the house, and then in exchange they are going to do something for you. We are going to use this example today to demonstrate the benefit for trading. Let's suppose we start out with two countries here. Well, one Canada and the other one United States. So both countries are assumed to produce only two goods, honey and maple syrup. We have the two PPF models here demonstrated on the graph and also in a tablet forms. We're not going to go into details of every single number here. At this point, I'd assume most of you guys actually understand how to read the tables and understanding what the graph is representing here. One important thing to note is we actually know the two countries are basically having a trade-off like a constant opportunity cost. The ultimate goal in this exercise is basically trying to reach to a solutions where the two countries can actually have the products of the two that beyond the PPF. So remember, very important concept here is each of these countries in the list actually have its limitations, either because of the resources in the country or maybe the technology they have to produce the two goods. The production possibility frontier actually demonstrates the limitation, the optimal level of outputs that they can actually achieve on their own. So if we can actually provide a solutions for the two countries to reach beyond the PPF at the same time, then basically it's evident that we're proving that trade can actually get them better off if they are not doing it on their own but trading with each other. So again, our goal is to find that one point on both graphs, that those 2 points on two graphs are beyond the PPF. So let's get started. So the first thing we are going to do in this process is to start finding what is possible to do for the two countries and what is the opportunity cost to produce those products. So these calculations can be done fairly easily. And of course, if you are trying to practice with this video, I would strongly recommend you to look at the table earlier and trying to calculate the opportunity cost for Canada to produce 1 more unit of maple syrups and for Canada to produce 1 more unit of honey, or same for the United States, so they can actually practice your math. Well, here I have the answer. So for Canada, to produce 1 more unit of honey, they have to give up 1.5 units of maple syrup. Vice versa, in Canada, if they want to produce 1 more unit of maple syrup, they only need to give up 2/3 of honey. In the United States, we have the opportunity cost for honey, which is exactly 1 unit of maple syrup they have to give up, and same for maple syrup, to give up 1 unit of honey. So now we have calculated the opportunity cost of the two products produced in the two countries. We are going to take the second step right here to compare which country actually has a lower opportunity cost to produce a particular types of products. So in this case, you can actually imagine we are trying to compare the opportunity cost of honey produced in Canada to the opportunity cost of honey produced in the United States. Well, United States have to give up 1 maple syrup to get that 1 unit of honey, versus Canada has to give up 1.5 units of maple syrup to get that 1 unit of honey. So therefore, United States has a lower cost to produce honey. On the other hand, Canada actually has a lower opportunity cost to produce maple syrup as comparing to the United States. Well, after the comparison, we can actually make a simple conclusion here. Well, since the opportunity cost to produce maple syrup in Canada is lower comparing to the United States, we say that Canada has the comparative advantage producing maple syrup. On the other hand, the United States will have the comparative advantage to produce honey. Well, keep in mind, the term comparative advantage here is not demonstrating which country can produce more honey overall or more maple syrup overall. This comparative advantage is the comparison of the opportunity cost in the productions between the two countries. So that is one very important thing to note. Well, now we find the comparative advantage of the two countries producing each of those goods. In the next step, we are going to take definitions of what we call specialization rule in economics to basically decide which countries should produce which products. So the specialization rule here is very, very simple to follow. Whichever country has a lower opportunity cost to produce a particular kinds of products, this country should always specialize on that particular product. So that means this country should devote all resources to produce that one thing. So in this case, we have Canada should specialize in the productions of maple syrup because they have a lower opportunity cost to produce it comparing to the US. And when they devote all resources to produce maple syrup, they will get a total of 60 tons of maple syrup. On the other hand, the United States should actually specialize in honey, and therefore they can get the maximum of 50 tons of honey out of their productions. Now, we have taken the specializations and defining which country to produce what. The next step here is basically given a trade scenario to the two countries, because now each country is only producing one good. But ultimately, we want actually the country to have both goods enjoyed, and also, more importantly, we want the two countries actually having the productions, or maybe the number of the two goods actually beyond the original PPF. Well, here's a trade scenario here. We suggest US to trade 20 tons of honey to Canada. In returns, Canada will actually trade 25 tons of maple syrup back to the United States. After this trade, the final result basically suggests Canada will have a total of 20 tons of honey and 35 tons of maple syrup left over, and United States will have 30 tons of honey left over with 25 tons of maple syrup from Canada. Well, are they really actually doing better? Oh, it's pretty difficult or challenging to discuss at this point. Or maybe it's very difficult to judge by the number. Maybe it's better idea to actually plot this point on the graph and compare it to the original PPF of the two countries. Are they really better? Let's take a look. Well, these are the two original PPF of the two countries. After the trades, we're now actually seeing both outputs here are actually beyond the production possibility frontier of the two countries' original have. So this basically demonstrates and proves a very important concept here. Even though the 2 points are just slightly outside of the PPF of the two countries, but keep in mind those 2 points were never achievable by the two countries, United States and Canada both. They cannot ever reach out to that point because if they are going to run the productions on their own, they're always having the production possibility frontier to demonstrate the constraints of the resources and what is the maximum outputs they can possibly achieve on their own. Those 2 points are never on the tables, and now it's make it available for both countries. And at this point, obviously, both countries are better off because those are the productions that they can never actually achieve on their own. So we have proven that when countries actually making trade with each other can actually search for a potential benefits on both sides. And that conclusion is very powerful because now you can think about how important it is for you to believe trade actually makes sense for your everyday life. Why you are taking public transportations to school. Why you are buying lunch from cafeteria. Why you are buying computer from Apple's. Why you are buying a smartphone from Samsung. All of these are trades that you have done every day. And have you ever wondered why? And now maybe you have an answer on your own. The main reason is because you know you can only achieve more in your life when you are willing to trade with other parties in this economy. You don't want to produce your own phone. You don't want to produce your own computer. You don't want to actually create your own rides to school, right? You want someone to specialize in producing those goods and services so that you can actually take advantage of them by putting a small amount of money on those products and services and get the most out of it. It's not like you cannot build a phone. It's not like you cannot build your own computer. But the problem is you are going to spend a lot of your time and efforts in order to achieve that. By paying a small amount of money, now you can actually get access to those goods and services. You can actually save those times and efforts and perform at the job that you can do best of. So specialization is a very big important topics in economics. And hopefully now it makes sense to you. Well, another confusing concept here that we are introducing here is basically called absolute advantage. This is something that it's very, very confusing for students at first, but hopefully this example might actually give you a better insight. Let's suppose we're assuming we're looking at the productions of United States and China. So both countries are producing automobiles and computers. So we are basically thinking about if the United States actually have all these advanced technologies, right, to actually produce more automobiles and computer than what can be produced in China, should United States ever trade with China on these products? And the answer, of course, it depends mainly on what we call comparative advantage. Let's give an example here. Let's suppose we are looking at this table here. So United States seems to have this absolute more outputs of both automobiles and computer as comparing to China. So even in this case, United States seems to produce more automobiles or maybe computer as comparing to China. There are still a reasons to believe that United States might actually get more out of the two products if they are willing to trade with China. Again, the concept we are learning here is to always measure the comparative advantage. So what do we mean by absolute advantage then? So the absolute advantage concept here is basically referring to assume the two countries have the same level of resources, technology, but one country can produce more of one good as comparing to the other. So in this case, the United States actually has absolute advantage on both automobiles and computer comparing to China. However, it's not representing the comparative advantage here. If we are going to perform our calculations, we will find that United States might actually have a comparative advantage on automobiles, but China actually has the comparative advantage on computer. So therefore, if we are going to discuss whether the United States should trade with China in this scenario, I would say yes, they should make change. As long as China is willing to specialize on the productions of computer, and United States is willing to specialize on the productions of automobiles, and they are willing to trade with each other, they will always, the two countries, can achieve more than what they are capable to do on their own. Again, we have proven that in our previous example, and hopefully this now makes sense to you. So trade decisions is derived from comparative advantage, but not absolute advantage. While stepping a little bit away from the PPF models, we would also like to introduce what we call a business circular flow diagrams here. A circular flow diagram basically describes how an economy is flowed from one side of the economy to another side of the economy. So this is a very simple market system that demonstrates the circular flow diagrams. As you can see, there are two groups of people here, or maybe two groups in the economy. One group is called households. The other group is called businesses. How the two groups interact in a market system are usually through two different markets. One is called the factor markets, and the other one is called the product markets. So the general idea here is pretty simple. Businesses will always try to sell some goods and services to the product markets, and we, the households, will always try to spend some money, and we call this consumptions, to buy those goods and services so that we can actually enjoy using them. On the other hand, where our money coming from? Well, we will be contributing our time and effort, sometimes our capitals, our saving, our money into what we call a factor markets. So factor market, it's basically where the firms and businesses, they will get the production's inputs or the factors of productions so that they can actually run the productions to create those goods and services for selling in the product markets. Let's take an example. We can think about Ford automobiles. So Ford might actually want to assemble some SUV in the product markets so that they can sell it to the households. But in order to actually produce those cars, they need to hire some technicians or ensemble worker. They also have to have some places to put the machines in there, so they need some land. They might also need to invest some money to buy new machines or robotic arm in the factory, so they need some financial capital, like money. So where can they find the money, the land, and the labor? Well, they're all coming from the factor markets. And who will provide those labor, land, and financial capitals? Well, we are. So you can think about you can contribute as a labor. If you own a piece of land, then you can actually rent that land out to Ford. If someone actually holding $1 million in the saving account and thinking about where they should invest that money to get a return in the future, they can contact Ford and let them know, hey, I know you need money. I'm going to lend you the money for now so that you can actually pay me back the money in the later time with some interest. So all of this are basically coming from the factor markets. And once the car is built, Ford is going to sell that product into product markets. And at the end, someone in the economy or the households will buy that car so that the money will flow back to the business. We are going to study a more complex circular flow diagram in the later chapter, but for now, this is a good way to kind of like summarize our supply-demand model in this upcoming chapter that we are going to investigate time-ons. Also, another very interesting chapter topics that we cover in chapter 2 is to talk about when and why economists disagree with each other. So in the study of economics, we're always investigating some questions and trying to answer them. But unfortunately, some of these questions can be answered with scientific evidence, but some of them cannot be. And we are basically trying to divide those two types of questions by the terms positive questions or normative questions. Whenever we are trying to answer a positive questions, we make a positive statement. So those positive statements are basically questions or answers that we can actually provide with some scientific evidence, and there is only one correct answer to it. So for instance, if we are trying to ask increasing tax on tobacco, is it going to reduce the consumption of tobaccos? And the answer would definitely be correct. There is no way this is not going to be correct. And the reason is because there is always a law of demand. The law of demand ensuring the higher the price of a product, the less people will buy it. On the other hand, there will be some questions that cannot be answered with that one absolute solutions or evidence, or maybe there is no evidence for that particular types of problems. And whenever we're answering those normative questions, we make the normative statements. So normative statements, it's basically a statement or conclusions made on certain questions based on a personal belief. So you can think about the following. So increasing tax on tobacco is the best policy in reducing tobacco consumptions. Now, these statements can be arguable, right? Depends on how you think about the effect of the tax policy and how much you know about the behavior of the consumers in the tobacco markets and what are the other alternatives in the markets to reduce tobacco consumptions. Different people will have different beliefs. Some people might actually think that it's better to have a free market for people to decide whether they should consume tobacco or not. Some people might think that maybe we should actually put an extreme tax on it so no one will ever buy tobacco ever again. Regardless how we want to think about the solutions on either one of the two sides or maybe somewhere within the spectrums, there will never be one solution that everyone will agree on. So therefore, when we are trying to answer some questions in economics, we always have to keep in mind some of these questions can be positive and some of these questions can be normative. And when we're answering the positive questions and making a positive statements, we have to always keep in mind that we're providing scientific evidence to prove their conclusions, and it cannot be disagreed. But when we are trying to answer some normative questions or providing a normative statement, and that is the time when economists can be very diverse, and they can always be disagree with each other. Well, so far we have talked about several parts of the economic study in chapter 2, and I hope that this is going to be a helpful chapter to build your foundations of economic modeling. So we have seen a very simple and powerful models in chapter 2, which is the production possibility frontier model. In the next chapter, we are going to go over the supply and demand models and try to get the essence of the markets. I hope you like this video, and if you do have any questions, feel free to ask your instructor, and I hope you enjoy watching it. I will see you in the next one. Thank you.